Okay, sixth grade, here's a couple examples from lesson 7.2 on solving problems with proportions. Example 1 says, for every 2 text messages that Anna sends, Kim sends 5. How many text messages would Anna send if Kim sends 40 messages? All right, so the first step is to set up my proportion. I'm going to write a ratio of Anna's text messages to Kim's text messages. Okay, so for every 2 that Anna sends, it tells me Kim sends 5. So my ratio is 2 to 5. I'm going to set that equal to, it says how many text messages would Anna send? I'm looking for Anna. How many does Anna send if Kim sends 40? Okay, so I'm focused on this right here. This is my proportion, my 2 equivalent ratios. Anna is on top, Kim is on bottom. Anna sends 2 for every 5 for Kim, and so if Kim sends 40, how many does Anna send? So I set up my proportion, then I can cross multiply 2 times 40, 2 times 40, and set that equal to 5 times A. 5 times A, which is A is for Anna. Okay, on the left side I have 2 times 40, which is 80, 5 times A, which is 5A. All right, to get A by itself, after I cross multiply, then I divide. So I cross multiply. Now I divide. I divide by the coefficient of the variable. So I divide both sides by 5. So I get A is equal to 80 divided by 5, which is 16. Okay, so if Kim sends 40 messages, then Anna sends 16 messages. So I set up my proportion, I cross multiply, I divide by the coefficient of the variable to get my unknown value. The second example is from a scale drawing. So a scale drawing is a drawing of a real object that is proportionally smaller or larger than the real object. And the scale describes how the dimensions in the objects compare. So it tells you how much bigger or how much smaller the scale drawing is. So here in this scale drawing, I have 2 towns, Sandville and Lewiston, and the scale drawing says that they're 2.5 inches apart. And the scale says that 1 inch is equal to 20 miles. All right, so I want to know how far is Sandville from Lewiston. All right, so there's 2 ways to solve this. I'll show you both of them. The first way is to set up a proportion. Okay, so I can say that 1 inch is the same as 20 miles. Right, that's the scale given to me, 1 to 20. That's the ratio, 1 inch to every 20 miles. I can set that equal to 2.5 inches to some unknown amount of miles. All right, and that's what I'm looking for. That will tell me how far Sandville is from Lewiston. So as you can see, my inches are on top in the numerator and miles are on bottom. Okay, so I first set up my proportion. Now I cross multiply. So 1 times, let's call this x, the unknown amount. 1 times x equals 20 times 2.5. 20 times 2.5 on the right side. So 1x is the same as x. 20 times 2.5 is equal to 50. So the unknown amount was 50. Okay, so if the scale was 1 inch is equal to 20 miles, then Sandville and Lewiston are 50 miles apart. Okay, so that's the first way you can solve this, is set up a proportion and solve for your unknown by cross multiplying and dividing. In this case, you don't have to divide because the coefficient's 1. Way number 2 is to use a conversion factor, and we'll be using this method a lot more once we get into lessons 7.3 and 7.4. Okay, so I could also use a conversion factor which would say this. I can say Sandville and Lewiston are 2.5 inches apart from one another on the scale. So I can say 2.5 inches over 1 times, and here's my conversion factor. I'm going to use this right here, the scale. Since inches are on top, I'm going to put inches on bottom so that they will cancel. Inches divided by inches would simplify to 1, and I want them to be gone because I want the distance to be in miles. So inches on bottom and miles on top. Okay, so my conversion factor right here, I'm going to use 1 inch. For 1 inch, there are how many miles? For 1 inch, there are 20 miles. Okay, so right here is my conversion factor, right? This is equivalent. This is 2 equal measurements according to my scale. 1 inch is the same as 20 miles. Okay, so what I'm finding right here is an equivalent ratio. So as I said before, my inches will cancel out. That's what I want to happen. Inches on top, inches on bottom cancel out. So my unit is going to be miles, since that's what I'm left with. Now I multiply the numerators. 2.5 times 20 will give me 50. And the bottom, 1 times 1 is 1, so my denominator is 1, so I don't really need it. Okay, so just like I found here, the 2 towns are 50 miles apart by using a proportion and cross-multiplying and dividing. Here I use a conversion factor, and again I find the distance between these 2 towns given this scale is 50 miles.